So I've got two scripture lessons today. The first one's from Mark, verses 1:29 through 39, and the second one's 1 Corinthians chapter 9, 16 through 23, I think. So I'm going to read Mark first. As soon as they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever. Does this sound familiar to anyone? And they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her and she began to serve them. That evening at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick and possessed with demons. And the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place. There he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on the neighboring town, so that I may proclaim the message there also. For that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. And then from 1 Corinthians. If I proclaim the gospel, this gives me no ground for boasting. For an obligation is laid on me, and woe to me if I do not proclaim the gospel. For if I do this of my own will, I have a reward. But if not of my own will, I am entrusted with a commission. What then is my reward? Just this, that in my proclamation I may make the gospel free of charge, so as not to make full use of my rights in the gospel. For though I am free with respect to all, I've made them myself a slave to all, so that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became a Jew, in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, though I am not free from God's law, but under Christ's law, so that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, so that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that I might by some means save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, so that I may share in its blessings. So I called this Ministry and How We Lead. And mostly I'm going to talk about the Corinthians verses, but I work both in. So in Paul's reading, he viewed this, able to go out and speak to people, as a privilege. He talks about not doing it for the money, and we've seen plenty of ministries around the world that it was really all about the money. And eventually all those collapse, because when it's not real, it just ends. It's an opportunity for service. And sometimes I think we get confused on that, because we'll have, my Kiwanis Club, we service people by helping them with their taxes. And although all of us are Christians, we're not doing that for God. And so sometimes I think churches get a little confused about why you're really doing something. It's okay to help people, but are you helping them because God is asking you to do that, or are you doing it to bring them closer to the Lord? And you're not doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for God's sake. So when Jesus healed the mother-in-law, she didn't just say there and go, "Boy, that was really fun. Jesus healed me." She got up and started doing stuff right after that. Jesus didn't need an audience, because he just took a couple of them in there to do the healing. It wasn't one of those big, cathedrals where there's thousands of people. There was a young man at Bethel when I was appointed there, and he had been in a really horrific car wreck. And so he could get around some, but he either had to use crutches or he had to be in a wheelchair, and he had to be assisted. And his parents had taken him to a revival one time. They told me this story just before I left. And they'd gone there, and they said, "Can he stand up and walk?" And they said, "He can get up on his own, but he can only really take a couple steps, and then he's going to have help." And so they set him down on the front row because he was in his wheelchair. And whoever it was had him stand, and then they acted like it was a miracle that he could stand. Well, he could always do that. They just falsely led people to believe that something happened there that day, and it wasn't really true, and it really bothered the mom and dad.
I got you.
Okay, that's good, because I don't know what I did with it. And so Paul viewed this as a duty that he chose. Now, how many of you had a job you really liked or have a job you really liked? How many of you had a job that you really didn't like? I had a little of both. And so Paul really enjoys doing this. And everyone should enjoy doing what you're doing. So when I was working in Pendleton one time, I really liked working there for the first probably 8 years I was there, but the last year I didn't. And I asked my wife one day, I said, hey, when I get to 69, so we all know where Yorktown is, right? When I get to 69, is it okay if I go north today on the interstate? And she said, you cannot quit your job until you find another. And so I just didn't enjoy it. But what Paul is telling us, he really enjoys doing this. And he's putting Jesus Christ. Yeah. I knew it was around here somewhere. And so he really enjoyed doing that. And so I would tell all of us, we need to find that greatest satisfaction in our life. And so he's not only looking for words and actions to match, because sometimes what we say and what we do and what we do and what we say don't match. And Paul's saying he likes doing this and he enjoys it. And it's not just for his soul, but he sees it, it's not just for an individual's soul, but he sees it as being part of like what we would call now holistic thinking, where it makes us better in everything. So this is the part I'm going to talk about the most today. So he has this idea of what he thinks is his ministry towards people. And he talks about this ability to be real, to get along with others and see others' points of view. Now, I think you could read that where he talks about he becomes a Jew to a Jew and he becomes weak to those who are weak. You could read that in a way that you would say, well, he's just doing whatever it takes to get in touch with people. And so what I want to do is talk about how there's another way to look at that to where it's not a negative. So the first thing I put up was being real. So I'm going to tell a couple stories on myself here, because those are the stories I know best. And so I was talking to one of my doctor buddies, and he said one of the problems now is that when you see a patient and you tell them something, you never really know if they understand it or not, because here's what you see. So you don't know how their face moved, if they enjoyed it, if they understood. He said, because a lot of times I'm telling them stuff that I'm trying to explain it to them, but I don't know that they really understand. But he said, by looking at their face, I could do that. And he said, so the masks have made that really hard. Now, for me, you guys have only really seen me mostly with the mask. But I'm just going to tell you, if I'm thinking something, it just shows. And I'll give you an example. I got to visit my hospital for a long period of time. I got to have a hospitalist. Now, never had a hospitalist before. Let's just say that at the beginning, he and I didn't get along. And that's an understatement. It was not a good first 24 hours. Got better later, but the first 24 hours was not good. About 2 months later, I got to go back and visit the hospital again. I didn't know, but whoever your hospitalist was the first time, you get the same hospitalist the second time. And when the nurse in the emergency room told me that, what I was thinking to myself was, oh crap. Now, I may have said it out loud because what she said to me was, is there a problem between the two of you? And then I'm thinking, did I say that or was I just thinking it? So I'm assuming that it was because my face just showed it. Well, what Paul's saying is you have to be real to people. You can't put on, we have a nephew, he's 38 or something now. But when he was little, he did what he called the salesman smile. It's a real toothy grin like this. And he would do it for anybody. You don't want to be that car salesman fake person. You have to be real. You have to be who you are. Now, this next part is about language. How many of you have ever been in the South? Okay? And it's not just the South, but that's where we visit the most. So I'm going to tell you another doctor story. When I was in the hospital for such a long time, I had Dr. Dunn. He was a wonderful doctor. He's either from Northern Ireland or Scotland. I can't remember. But it doesn't matter, because sometimes he'd be talking to me and I would go, I have no idea what you're saying. And in theory, we were both speaking English, right? But one day he went through this big long thing. Benita's there and he's explaining what's wrong with me. And I thought I was following him okay. And then we got to the very last word. And I don't know what he said, but I realized that I had no clue what he was talking about. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I need you to tell me that whole thing again, but whatever that last word you used, don't use it again. And so he re-explained it to me, and that time I understood it. Now, that brogue that he had just made it hard for me to understand him. Now, when we were in Washington, D.C. one time at the hotel we were staying at, so I've got a Washington, D.C. and a Texas story. In the Washington, D.C., all the servers were Vietnamese. I don't know about you, I don't speak a lot of Vietnamese, okay? So we're at breakfast, and Benita, and I don't remember how many girls are with us, but they're ordering breakfast, and they're not communicating very well between them and the server. And so then we get into this conversation. It's like, we're ordering eggs, but she wants to know what kind of eggs we want, and they don't understand what she's asking, and all of a sudden, I'm the interpreter. And they're wanting like scrambled eggs and whatever. She's asking a question, I'm answering, and when we're done, I'm going, hey, I don't speak Vietnamese here. You guys just have to listen better. Because I didn't understand her any better at the end than at the beginning, but it's how are you willing to work at it? And we were in Texas one time. We went into Mexico. It's the only time I've ever been there. Benita wanted to eat lunch at a cafe, and Alicia and I said, we're not eating any place on this side of the river. You're going to have to get us on the north side of the river before we eat someplace. And we found a place, and we walked in there. The menu was in Spanish, and nobody there spoke English but us. And so, I think that was a Benita and Alicia thing. They both speak a little Spanish. I do not, okay? I walked around the restaurant, and they had a newspaper article that was in English and talked about their specialty. And so when I looked at the menu, I knew I was getting a specialty because there was words I could understand. And that's what I ordered. And Benita and Alicia ordered in Spanish, although, it's like Pig Latin Spanish. I mean, they sort of kind of know what they're doing, but they can't follow everything. And so when they get done, the lady asks them a question. And they start looking at each other because they don't understand the question. And I said, she wants to know if you want fried or floured. And they answer the question. She walks away. My daughter, who was 18 then, and is a little bit like me where she'll just say what she's thinking, she said, Dad, how did you know that was the question? And I said, well, I don't know what she said, but there was only two words I understood, fried and floured. So clearly, she wanted to know which of those two you wanted. And I said, but it's about listening. Do you take the time to listen? So now I'm going to make fun of the South, since I've made fun of Texas and Washington, D.C. I'd never been in the South until Benita and I got married. Just never been there. And like a lot of parts of the country, they use words that we don't use in the same way. So we were going down there one time, and Benita's sister, who's since passed away, is probably my favorite of her sisters. They were talking about doing something. We needed to go to the grocery store. And her sister says to me, I will carry you down there. And I looked at her and I said, you can't carry me to the front door. You certainly couldn't carry me the 2 miles to the grocery store. She said, okay, I will take you in the car. Yes, you can do that, but you are not carrying me anyplace. So we're speaking English, right? But not the same language. And so then we stopped at the hotel one time, and we would leave home and leave beautiful Yorktown, drive down to about Huntsville area, and then it was like 2 more hours to Birmingham the next day because we'd waited till the girls would get out of school, and that was about all we could drive. So it was like midnight, 1 o'clock. I go in to check in, and the guy says to me, I need your tag number. And I'm looking at him. I go, tag? He goes, yeah, what's your tag number? On what? He goes, on your car. And I go, what tag? What do you want? He goes, the tag on your car, what's the number? I go, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. He said the license plate. Oh, yeah, I know what the license plate is, but I didn't understand what tag was. And I'd never heard anybody use that before that way. And so it's not just in the United States. When we were in England, I got a hamburger one day. It was the only place I could find that had a real hamburger. And I got it, and the lady, who, again, we're all speaking English, right? She says to me, do you want a salad on that? And I go, it's a hamburger. She goes, uh-huh. But do you want salad with it? I go, no, I just want a hamburger. I don't understand what you're saying. She goes, do you want lettuce and tomato and onion on your hamburger? Yes, I would love that. But the whole salad thing didn't make any sense to me. That's what Paul's really talking about here. It's not that we don't speak the same language. The question is, can he get to where we can understand each other? And so even though he says, well, I'll speak to Jews like Jews, so he didn't want to use language to them that they didn't understand. I don't know if any of you guys had ever heard Dr. Lacey speak. He passed away a few years ago. He was the pastor at Yorktown for a long time. He was too smart because he would be doing a sermon and all of a sudden he would say a word and I would realize I had no idea what he was talking about. And so I'd pay attention because I thought I'll look up the word at the end and it'll make sense. But a lot of times once you heard the whole thing, you could figure out what he was doing. One of the things that's made me do is I try to never use a word that I don't think everybody else knows. And if I do, I try to explain it so that you're not sitting there going, what is he talking about now? What is a tag? What is a salad on a hamburger? It's the same thing. If I use words that you don't understand, then it doesn't have any meaning. What Paul is saying here is if you're going to try to talk somebody into having a relationship with the Lord, you have to speak to them on a level that they can understand, whatever that is. And so the question is, are you willing to try to do that? Are you willing to try to get along? So I've had computer trouble, which is not good for me. It did an update on some software thing that's supposed to protect my computer and a Microsoft update within 2 days of each other, which, just so you know, that means nothing's going to work. Isn't that right, Tim?
You got it.
Okay. So it was working, but man, it was going slow. And so I called my friends from Dell. I know you're going to be surprised, but I believe he was from India. And so sometimes I have a little trouble understanding that. Again, we're all speaking English, right? But I have a little trouble with that accent. And so it's just like with Dr. Dunn or the lady in England or people in the South. If you don't understand because they say a word or use, it's not so much words sometimes, but it's phrasing. We put things together differently from different places. Then you have to be willing to say, hey, you know what? I didn't really understand that. What are you asking me to do? What you can't do is just say, I give up and I'm not even going to try to have a relationship with you. For one thing, I need the guy on the other end of the phone for the computer. But if you're trying to bring the message to the Lord to somebody that you don't have a relationship with, and even though you're all speaking English, it's not the same English, how are you going to get to that person's level to do that? I think that's what Paul's main message is here. It's what are you going to do to get to that right place? And if you're the person that's trying to tell the story, you can't just give up because it wasn't easy. When we were in the restaurant in Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden I became the interpreter between my family and the Vietnamese waitress that we had, she was speaking English, it was just with an accent. Same as in, the Mexican place isn't a good example because I had no idea what she was saying until we got to Fried and Floured. But you have to listen to figure out what that is so you can communicate. So when you're reaching out to somebody, and maybe you guys don't have anything in common, nothing, you've just stumbled into each other somehow, find that place that you can be in common, wherever that is. And sometimes it's hard. Because when I'm on the phone, especially on the phone on tech support, because I understand where the on-off button is. I can do a few things. I am not the most geekiest guy in the world. And if they get to geeking me, at the same time we have an accent, it's almost easier sometimes to go, I'm just going to hang up and try this again. But the odds are the language is going to be that different, so you might as well just work through it. That's what we're being asked to do in this scripture. Work through those relationships, get down to whatever that level is of that person you're talking to so that you can tell them about your relationship with God. Father, be with us all as we go out into your world. Let us be guided and directed by your wishes and not ours. Let us find a way to communicate with those who do not know your love and your grace, that we can bring them to a better place in their life in all that they say and do. Amen.